Hello, everyone, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Welcome to our virtual event, Let's Get Real about representation in film and television. My name is Angelica Figueroa. I'm a writer and instructor here at the Los Angeles Film School. Thank you for joining us. We've got an amazing and talented group of individuals here with us. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to give a condensed version of their bios, but you can read their full bios in the description box on YouTube. Without further ado, let me introduce them. Our first panelist is Danny Fernandez. Danny is a writer, actor, producer, and songwriter. He is currently working on season 2 of iCarly on Paramount Plus, with previous writing credits including Diary of a Future President for Disney Plus, Love, Victor on Hulu, and Eva Longoria's Grand Hotel on ABC. Danny was selected for the 2020 LATINXT List, groundbreaking initiative founded by Zoe Saldana, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Robert Rodriguez, recognizing and elevating breakthrough US Latinx creatives. Danny was born in Miami and is a first-generation Cuban-American. After noticing the lack of authentic Latinx representation on TV and film, Danny decided to dedicate himself to writing the material himself. He quickly fell in love with writing and telling stories that were true to his experiences as a first-generation Latino-American. Welcome, Danny. Be sure to turn your camera on. Up next is Sal Cayeros. Sal is an LA native who started out as a graffiti artist in high school and college. He graduated from the ABC Writing Fellowship in 2006, but his first true writing job was for the Domestic Violence Clinic in San Fernando Courthouse. After also working 3 years as a family law paralegal and a court interpreter, he transitioned into entertainment. He started as a research analyst at FX and then as a media planner at a Hispanic marketing agency. Sal also has a beautiful family that provides entertaining and challenging culture clashes that fuel his creativity. Sal, thanks for joining us. Be sure to turn your camera on. And lastly is Maria. Maria Escobedo is a native New Yorker living in Los Angeles who writes for both live action and animation. Her writing credits include Grey's Anatomy, Hulu's Eastless High, plus Madagascar, A Little Wild for DreamWorks, Nickelodeon's Santiago of the Seas, and Disney's Elena of Avalor. She's a first-generation Latina raised in New York City's Washington Heights. Yes, she was raised in the Heights. And she spent her summers with family in Miami and Puerto Rico. After film school, Maria co-wrote and directed Rum and Coke, an indie film, and wrote a movie for Disney Channel. Lifetime co-wrote and developed a half-hour single cam pilot for Nickelodeon. She recently co-wrote and developed an hour-long dramedy for pilot for ABC. Maria has also written and sold in the animated kids space, Disney, Nick, Amazon, Netflix, Universal Kids, DreamWorks, PBS, earning a Humanitas nomination. Maria also served as chair of the Latino Writers Committee at the WGAW for 5 years. Hi, Maria, great to have you here. Be sure to turn your camera on. Now, before we get into the discussion, let's loosen up a little bit with some icebreakers. So what's your go-to karaoke song? Sal, let's start with you.
I don't karaoke, honestly, but if I did, honestly, it'd probably be something super silly from like Weird Al Yankovic, who's like a personal hero of mine.
Okay, let's go with Maria.
I also do not karaoke, although I have a wonderful voice that nobody's ever heard, except me. But no, I was on a cruise actually, and I really got into Dua Lipa's No Rules or New Rules, and I just couldn't stop singing that song.
That's cool. And what about you, Danny?
One, don't turn off the phone. Yes.
Yes.
I do karaoke, and Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It, and Fergie, London Bridge. So easy songs. Not
Okay, and this next question, which actor or actress could play you in your life story? So let's start with Danny, you first.
Maybe Jerry Seinfeld, I think. I get that a lot, or Matthew Broderick. I don't get a lot of Latinos, and that's one of the things I talk about in my writing, because I don't look like what TV and film has put out for as Latinos. So it's funny, like I always say, like for me it'd be Jerry Seinfeld or Matthew Broderick. For my mother it'd be like Taya Leone or Virginia Madsen. But we're both, Cubanitos or Cubanita for her, or Cubanitex. I don't know. They from Miami. So yeah.
Okay. What about you, Sal?
Well, my sister says that I look like Ray Romano sometimes, so it'd have to be Ray Romano. So keeping it with the comedy thing going here, and I've been told by other people, so I guess it would be Ray Romano.
All right, and you, Maria?
I could not take this question seriously. I have no idea. First of all, who would want to play my life story? So I would just go, okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Now let's try finishing these sentences. So I create because. Let's start with you again, Danny.
I create because I want to reflect, I guess, again, who I am and my communities back to people at home.
All right. Maria?
I was going to say I create because I want to stay sane, because I feel like my head's got so many things going that I feel like I have to, it's my way of meditating and concentrating is to write. But, I can't fool anybody. I'm not sane. So I don't know why it's going.
All right, Sal.
Honestly, I create because I have to. If I'm not actively writing or working on something, I just feel like at odds with myself. I get like a little bit down or a little bit sad. So I have to always just be cranking something out.
That's the need of the artist, right, to create. So what about I represent for? So let's start with Maria.
I also have a Cubanita mother. So a single mom raised me. And so I think I represent for her.
Mm-hmm. So.
I guess by stuff I recently have written, I'm kind of representing Los Angeles, specifically Latino Angelinos, because we have a lot of stories to tell that are not about, gangbangers. But if it is about gang life, there's other angles that honestly can be explored that just have not been.
Okay. And Danny?
And I represent, for my city, for Miami, for mi patria, Cuba, and for my family, para mis abuelos.
Okay, fantastic. So you've all had different roles over the course of your careers, but how would you specifically describe what you do today? So let's start with Sal.
I guess what I describe it as, I tell stories through collaboration, working with directors, actors, set designers, editors. It's a very unique way to tell a story. You're telling one story, but you're working with all these people to sort of just put it out there. So I would say it's that, telling a story through collaboration.
Okay. And how about you, Maria?
Yeah, I mean, I look at myself as a writer. I tell stories too. I feel like what I do day to day, I feel like is sort of like there's a fine line between filtering yourself, and not filtering yourself in order, especially when you're in a room and you're sharing, ideas that hopefully will be the germ or the seed of something that grows. So it's an interesting just place to be in your brain.
Right, and Danny.
Can you repeat the question again?
So how do you describe what you do today?
What I do today? Very similar. I mean, it's similar. It's using your own, I'm in a room, I'm in iCarly right now. So it's, a multicam. And so it's bringing your own experiences, bringing those stories that you have. And again, very could be very awkward stories, very embarrassing stories, but since they're put in other characters, we just kind of get to put all of our embarrassments, our trauma, our humor, and all the things that we wish we could say into other people's mouths, and then have millions of people see it instead of just our relatives whose feelings would be hurt. So it's cool that way.
Yeah, it's very, very cool jobs you guys have. So, okay, now that we know more about your roles, I want to play a clip that was just aired on Good Morning America not too long ago about Latino representation in Hollywood. Can we play that clip?
Michael, good morning. He is making moves, but there's been some progress when it comes to diversity in films, but when it comes to Latino representation in the film industry, it's just not there. Studies show there is little for the Latino community to celebrate in popular films. Tessa Thompson, Zoe Saldana, Jennifer Lopez,
would you like to join us?
Lin-Manuel Miranda. These are some of the biggest names in Hollywood, and they're Latino. But new studies still show there is a lack of accurate representation in Hollywood. According to a study conducted by the US Government Accountability Office in 2019, only 5% of leads in film were Latino, while Afro-Latinos made up 6% of lead roles in a 13-year span. Behind the scenes, only 4.2% of directors across 1,300 films were Latino.
We've known Latinos are not in movies. We have seen the conversations grow regarding diversity, equity, inclusion. But if these aren't leading to jobs, if these aren't leading to more representation on camera, on screens, for us to see ourselves, then this is for nothing. It's just lip service.
Okay, I'm not sure if anyone saw it when it aired, but the segment goes on to talk about how Edward James Olmos teamed up with the Latino Film Institute and created a program to nurture young filmmakers. But what I want to ask is, when is the first time that any of you remember being seen or accurately represented in your field, either on screen or behind the scenes? So let's start with Danny.
That's an easy one. It would be I Love Lucy. I think I was very lucky. I feel very fortunate, actually, that I felt seen from, I was privileged, I would say, in that way, where I did feel seen from some of the first reruns I can ever remember, where someone spoke like my family. I could understand what he was saying. I knew the music he was playing, like, even like Cielito Lindo and all that stuff, that I was just like, oh my God, that was on TV in the 50s. And so it kind of turbocharged me, because I was like, damn, we haven't had that since the 50s. Like we've had very few little moments, but once I started, I wanted to go to acting school, and then I went to acting school, then I found my way into writing, and then I was then into creating sitcoms and writing for sitcoms. And I was like, oh, now I'm literally doing what I first saw on TV. So I usually say that I was very privileged to have a representation that I saw very early on. Then I didn't get much after that until now. So that kind of spawned me to create it myself. That's
very interesting. What about you, Sal?
Yeah, so not necessarily in my field, and I'm going to totally date myself here, but I just said I Love Lucy. But, that's as dated as it can be. Yeah, but look at you, man. You're like what, like 12 years old, dude. You're like, God bless you. God bless you. But like, probably nobody's ever maybe seen an episode here, but it was Watching Chips, about the California Highway Patrol, starring Eric Estrada back in the 80s, right? Now, he didn't speak Spanish, didn't wear the culture on his sleeve, but in a television landscape where all the heroes were Caucasian, oh my God! Even at a young age, I recognized that was different, and like I took ownership in that, and there was some pride in that. That this guy who was brown, and had my skin tone, was the lead, and that was the first time that I was like, oh, that's cool, like that, And even at a young age, I could sort of recognize that.
Very good. What about you, Maria?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, same as Danny, like watching reruns of I Love Lucy and seeing Ricky. I mean, my uncle was a singer, a performer at a nightclub, and so it was very much like my, I knew these people, and and also like the reruns at the time too of like West Side Story. Like I know that it has its issues, and Maria was not Latina and all of this stuff, but the day after that would, either that would play or we'd talk about, everyone in school was singing Maria. Of course, my name's Maria, so everyone was singing that. And so it did have some connection to me, but then a huge gap of time. And it wasn't, I think, until like Real Women Have Curves, or something that like all of a sudden I'm like, wow, a Latina, lead. I mean, that was awesome. I actually saw that in what was it, in the at the film festival, that so that was great.
So seeing yourself represented definitely influenced your decision for your career and what you've been doing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For me, not so much. I mean, I don't think I saw Ricky Ricardo and said, "Oh shit, I want to do write for television." I didn't think that necessarily. It just sort of made me feel like, like that there's somebody who's like me. It wasn't until, I mean, I had I went into advertising. I did a whole bunch of other stuff before I started to write. But yeah, once I did start to write, I was like, I'm writing about myself and my life, and where is everything else that's supposed to be like this? There wasn't any. So.
Okay. All right. So, adding to that, the Emmys were a few weeks ago at this point, and while we saw a record number of people of color nominated, we didn't see that reflected in the wins. Are these kind of discussions being held in writers' rooms, or do they talk about this? Sal, what about you?
Yeah, we definitely talked about it. First of all, we thought Michaela Cole should have won everything, even the stuff she wasn't nominated in. But I mean, in truth, while winning a like little gold statue doesn't make you a better storyteller, but the fact is that when those awards are handed out to people who have told diverse stories or are diverse, it opens up doors because they're like, oh, wow, that's actually hitting a cultural chord, or we can make money, So I think it's important for more people to get nominated so they can win, so there could be more opportunities for diverse storytelling.
Mm-hmm. What about what's your opinion, Danny, about this? Like these conversations being held in your
yeah. Yeah, and we make jokes about it. We make jokes about it in the scripts and and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, what do you? I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, it happened at this Emmy, but it happened 2 years ago at the Oscars So White, and before then just every single Oscar and every single award show for the longest time, and so it's, yeah, I mean, we talked about it, but it's like we talked about it again. It's just one of those things that it's unfortunate. There's things that are being done to help correct it, but at the end of the day, great, The Crown won. Okay, cool. I'm going to go work on my show. So.
Maria, anything you want to talk about this?
I mean, I've been around long enough to ride the wave up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's nothing new. It's unfortunate. And, every time we think that we're advancing in some way, and we are, I don't want to, I mean, some of the work that, Sal and Danny have been doing. I mean, that's, incredible stuff that, 5 years ago, even there weren't enough Latino writers, so I think now if anybody says, I just can't find a Latino writer, like now they're really just not trying. Like they're not even opening the, opening up their computer and looking, or something. So yeah, I mean, I'm a little spoiled because my, in my show is about a little Latina, girl. And so we have these discussions all the time anyway, just trying to bring as much authenticity as we can to the show. So yeah, it wasn't like, a big, eye-opening thing.
All right, with that said, let's play some clips from projects that you have all worked on. Let's start with Danny's clip from Love, Victor. For those who don't know, the show takes place in the world of the 2018 film Love, Simon, but is centered around Victor, a teenager living in Atlanta, and his journey of self-discovery, facing challenges at home and struggling with his sexual orientation. Let's see the clip.
Victor, word? Yeah. Hey, is everything okay?
Tita just saw your two friends, the guys in the band, kissing.
That's because they're together.
You need to tell them not to do that here. What if your little brother sees them?
Victor, just please, it's a family party.
No! I'm sorry, Poppy. I really wanted today to go smoothly, but those are my friends. I'm not gonna tell them not to be who they are if that bothers you. That's your problem, not theirs and not mine.
This is how you teach your son to speak to his abuelo?
Yeah, it is. I raised him to be true to himself and to stand up for the people.
Wow. This is a scene that is very realistic. I could see that happening in a lot of Hispanic families. So can you briefly walk us through your creative process in writing this episode?
It was very personal. I'm very still get choked about it now because it's cool. It's Tito is what I call my own grandfather, and you could hear it in a little bit. But the rest of that clip was them saying, we just don't understand it. Like, this world is changing so quickly and we just don't understand it. And things that we thought are now just completely being turned upside down. And then they end up all playing Frozen, like Elsa wands, and playing Frozen with each other. And so it was a really nice moment to kind of, and that was one of the challenges of that show, or opportunities of that show, was to show realistically how a Latin grandfather would react in that. Because I think, but then also showing like my own grandfather, giving him the benefit of the doubt once I did come out to him. And now he's met my boyfriend, he's met, we've been on trips together, and it's all wonderful. It was not wonderful at first, but it became wonderful. And I think it was trying to concentrate on the love that people have with each other. Because I think a lot of times when Latin people don't write the story, we kind of get a one-dimensional, like, no, that's bad, and you're out of the family forever, and bye, and then they go to their Caucasian friend's house, and they're all much more accepting about them. And so I think that's, maybe some cases, but I think that's with anybody. I wanted to show someone rising to the occasion and maybe going against everything that they thought that they knew growing up in a traditional household. And I think that's everybody. That's the universal thing. That's like, can you rise to the moment and take reality over your preconceived notions? And so I think we did that in the show, and that's something that I was proud of that we were able to do.
Yes. Okay, up next, let's show a clip from Snowfall, which is very different from Love, Victor. Sal is currently a co-executive producer of this show. Snowfall, created by John Singleton, centers around the drug epidemic and corruption in Los Angeles in the 80s. Let's play the clip.
What did Ramiro say?
He wasn't happy, obviously. But he agreed to keep things running.
He's letting it continue.
Con unas condiciones. First, Ramiro's taking control of the entire operation.
He's taking it away from you.
Considerando lo que hicimos, it could be a lot worse.
Peor que being Ramiro's slave.
He also doesn't want to do business with Stomper anymore. Los monarcas pose too much risk, and we don't need them. Once my father's gone, we could use our own distribution network.
What do I tell Al Stomper, Al Hernan?
Esa es la otra condición. You aren't to do anything. Should be enough for you to start over.
As the co-executive producer, what's one of the biggest technical challenges you've had with the show?
So, honestly, one of them is authenticity. We're telling a story that takes place in a very specific time, very specific location, Los Angeles, 1980s, in Black and brown communities during the birth of crack. And like you mentioned, John Singleton, who created it, authenticity was huge for him. Like, it had to feel real. So a lot of the drug stuff, like, we have consultants, we actually have somebody on staff who was in the game, like, for real, like running stuff, we turn to. But it's always also not super easy to do, because what you forget is that during those days, there was not a lot of political correctness, you know? So often when we're writing it, we have to take ourselves outside of our present 2021 selves and try to put us in what a character would say and do, male, female, you know, brown, black, back in the 80s. And often it's not always pretty, the things that they say, the things that they do. That technically is what becomes kind of gnarly. And there's always a lot of, you know, discussions going on about that in the room.
Wow. Do you have any influence on how these characters are portrayed?
For me?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And because, like I said, it's a crime show dealing with gangs, drugs, crime, we try to push against stereotypes. At the same time, like I said, remain authentic. So we're mindful of violence. It's a violent show if you've ever watched it, but we also try to show the ramifications and, you know, try not to glorify it necessarily. And when I have to write Latino gang characters, because of course it takes place in that world, it's always about what's the angle, you know, what's the humor, what's the heart, what have we seen before, and how can we sort of turn it on its head so it feels like it's being written by people who are from those communities and not somebody who's grown up watching those stereotypes on the television.
Very interesting. Now let's show a clip from the adorable kids show, Santiago of the Seas. The show follows Santiago, an 8-year-old pirate of his and his crew, as they embark on rescues, uncover hidden treasures, and keep the Caribbean high seas safe. Maria wrote this episode. Okay, Maria. So since this is a kids show, there's also some educational elements to it. Did you feel any creative pressure because you have to incorporate all this educational elements into something that is entertaining?
Well, it depends on the network that you work with. I mean, Nickelodeon's a little less like stringent about curriculum and all of that. But yeah, I mean, we're always careful of modeling behavior, you know. So so kids are gonna are gonna try to do what Santiago did and try to do, you know, whatever. So, or speak to their parents the way that, you know, Santiago speaks to his. So you're always mindful of that, but you have to keep the funny, you know. So there's that little, you know, fine line that you play with the stories and with the characters and, you know, with the action.
Okay, very interesting. All right. So has anyone ever had the experience of pitching an idea to a group of executives or other writers who might not understand your specific cultural perspective? And if so, how did you handle it? So who wants to start?
I think there's, I'm sure all you two can also agree that like being a Latin person in the room or being someone non-Caucasian, white, straight male, you often have to do that. Or either you're the squeaky wheel or the person who's like, actually, maybe this is not. I'm sure, Sal, on your show, you have to be probably like very diplomatic at times and be like, well, maybe this is a different way of saying it, or, you know, we kind of don't do it this way. I think a lot of the things that I've had to do is it's a little bit different than your question, but like I would be asked, like, does a Latin family have a crucifix on the wall? Or would a Latin family always go to church? Or would a Latin family always do this? And I go, well, you know, I say, maybe if this family does, then let's do that. That will just then affect how they treat the daughter. If she goes on a date, that will treat this person, how it does that. You know, because it's like my family doesn't really go to church, but they still have Catholic upbringings and that kind of thing. So I think it's, which I think a lot of film students will be, it's valuable for them to know. It's like, be very specific. And so I try to be very specific with my pitches, especially if I'm pitching something that a creator or a showrunner might not understand or might not get. I don't like to do generalities. I would say like, this specific thing from my Latin family could be something that we use here, or this would be more appropriate for this kind of Latin family. And let's paint with a very specific brush and not a general one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sal, do you want to?
Yeah, for me, I specifically remember in one of my first staff jobs, I made it wasn't even a cultural reference. It was a reference to day laborers, you know, the guys that you see outside Home Depot. And there were some people in the room who were like, what's a day laborer? And I'm like, oh man, we're talking two different languages here, you know? And then, so that sort of made me sort of self-censor myself, maybe a little bit more than I should have. Again, I was very early on, and not bring up things like that because I didn't want to explain them, you know? I didn't want to be, you know, kind of like what Danny was referring to. I didn't want to be that person where I have to explain it. It wasn't a show that explored, you know, cultural aspects or anything necessarily, but after getting that sort of like, you know, what is that? I kind of, you know, stopped sort of making those references, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just keep that to myself, you know, that sort of thing.
But did you not feel that it was important to explain that, or?
You know what? At that point in time, since it was like one of my first jobs, I'm like, you know what? It's probably not even worth it, you know, because it was, you know, I'm like, am I going to have to just explain a lot more, and then, you know, will I get weird looks, and then be like, oh, okay, and then they'll just move on. So I was like, you know, it's like those first jobs, man, they're so difficult.
Mm-hmm. All right, and Maria.
Yeah, I agree with Sal. You got to pick your battles. You know, there are many battles. There's many times that that's not a battle, but, you know, that's just obviously a phrase. But yeah, there are many times when you want to say something, you know, I try to harness the New Yorker in me, which will be like, what the, you know, so I try to not do that. But yeah, I mean, I remember pitching a movie and, you know, to a studio, and they quoted me like, you know, like just studies that they had done, and 4 out of 5 Latinos think family is important, and this is, and I'm like, okay, that's really good. I'm sure you paid a lot of money for those studies, but I mean, you bring in more authentic people and they can tell you, in my family, it's also hard to say, 4 out of 5 Latino well, where are they from? Where do they live? Are they, because obviously Latino Latinx is a huge, encompasses so many different cultures and countries, and so it's just, we're not an easy group, but I agree with Danny, like the more specific that you could be, the better, really, the better storytelling, it is. And I think in a way that has been embraced, again, I've been around a little bit. It was about, tell us a Latino story. Now it is where they do want to hear the specific story, so.
Yes, we're seeing change. So the $1 million question. What action steps can we take to improve representation in film and television? Whoever wants to start.
I think it's. Okay. Go ahead, Danny.
Sorry, I think hire more people.
Yeah.
Definitely in front of the camera, behind the camera, in the rooms, in support staff, on the executive level. Just because it's always. There's a shorthand and you get it. And I think also, like, whenever I've gone into pitch things, I realize that my pitches are sometimes 2 pages longer than like a normal pitch, because I have to explain the culture before I go into the culture and say, oh, this is why Cubans behave this way, or this is why, whatever. And then instead of just like, mom wants to move with the, with the kids. Isn't that funny? And then it's like, so it's,
Okay, hire more people. Okay, so
Yeah.
Sal.
Yeah, I think that, for people like us who are on this panel, and other creators, writers, director, executives, that we have to actively pull people up. It's great to have diversity programs, but I think it's incumbent on all of us who work and climb the ladder and get the opportunity to, bring marginalized and underrepresented people along for the ride, that we should do that in from big ways to small ways, to reading a script and giving notes, to recommending somebody for staffing. Actually, I just recently, came across a writer who is fantastic, and I'm going to try to recommend her to these producers at HBO. And I think we all have to sort of do that, which kind of goes along the line of what Danny says. But I think that sometimes we also have the ability to help out.
Absolutely.
Maria.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I would go a little further to say, like, even in the agency and manager level, there need to be more people of color, more Latinos. I mean, I think that again, it's the same thing Danny said. You walk in and unless they sort of get you, if they don't understand that, yes, you have this background, but you can also, write for some fun animated thing, or you can write for a dark drama, or you can write, so that you're not just being looked at as filling that one Latino little spot that they have on a show. So I think that, it really is important in representation.
Yeah. And off of that, my agent, Brandon Lawrence, is Black. And one of the first things I said to him, he was pitching me for Grand Hotel. And then, so I said, oh yeah, pitch me for Grand Hotel. Like, I'm Cuban from Miami. And then he's like, okay, but beyond Cuban and Miami, what can you contribute? And so it's even in my own mindset, because I had been told so many times, oh, you're Latin, you're Cuban from Miami, you're going to work, or like, that's how, like, they would literally say, that's how you're going to get into the room, because you're Latin, or that's how you're going to get staffed, and you can get staffed through programs and all that kind of stuff. And then it took my agent, who is a Black man in a very corporate, white, atmosphere to say, great, what else you got? And like, what do we market you as? So it is that understanding people and taking those labels off and really just getting to the nitty gritty.
And definitely your work of all of you, it shows that it's not just about being represented, but about having all these great stories. So, okay, so now what's one tangible piece of advice that you wished someone had given to you when you first started out? Let's start with Maria.
I think one thing is to just have lots of samples. You know, when you're starting out, have lots of samples, and not be afraid to network. You know, to show your work. I mean, share it with whoever, and if anybody, you know, wants to hear what you've got going, just tell them about it. I mean, you know, the more people that know who you are and know your writing and know where you want to go, I think the better.
I think definitely in crafting those samples and crafting your work that's going to be your calling card, especially when you don't have a resume or jobs that you've worked, is crafting things in your own very specific voice. Like as a young writer, don't go into writing a script saying, this is what's going to sell. They love this. This is what's going to sell, because guarantee you're not going to sell that script. What is going to be sold is your voice and the way a prospective boss sees your voice on a page. That will get you jobs. That will get you work. You know, saying Hollywood wants like the next Ted Lasso, so I'm going to write the Ted Lasso. It's like, you're not going to sell the next Ted Lasso. I'm not going to sell the next Ted Lasso, like, you know, yet. But, you know, so it's working. It's really just your voice on the page as much as you can, and your specific point of view and a unique point of view.
Yeah, and I would actually follow along the same theme with a little bit of a twist, which is have writing samples ready for when you lose that first job. Because when you're out of that job, you want to be able to be like, here, manager, agent, here's 3 other samples that I work on. Now, that's probably a little bit too much. But what you don't want to do is be out of a job and working on a sample, hoping that this sample will get you the next gig. That happened to me. And it's hard to write, you know, when you got to try to pay the mortgage and you're not working. So even though it's hard, and you get that first job as a staff writer on that weekend, you know, you need to be ready for when that job ends, because that job will end at some point. If you're lucky, you'll write it. If not, like most of us, it's going to end, and you better have something to turn around and show your agents and be like, well, I know this job is over, but I got this sample, I got this pit, you know, whatever have you. Like, just be ready.
And that's a great piece of advice, just to piggyback on that as well, is that when you get the job, you're still working on the weekends, working on your own stuff, working on your next sample, working on your next idea. You're never resting. You're never resting until, I don't know when until. It hasn't happened yet, but yeah. Yeah. But if you love it, it's, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of students are afraid of sharing their work because they fear that, you know, that they will steal their ideas. What would you tell those students?
I personally would say that ideas are a dime a dozen. Everybody has an idea. I'm going to have an idea. Danny and I will probably have a similar idea. It's about the execution. Like, if Danny and I are both given a, you know, task, or Maria, write a vampire story. They're going to be so different, right? Vampire in the Hood. Yeah. You know, but you need to share that stuff, because ultimately that's what you're going to have to do. You can't be like, hold it all in and be afraid to share it.
Yeah, the chances of somebody stealing it is much less than the chances of somebody liking it and getting you a job.
100%.
Yes.
And also with email, like, in case that does happen, you have a direct chain. You say, hi, schmoopy poop person, this is my script. Thank you for your consideration. You have that paper trail if schmoopy poop takes it and then makes it into an HBO Max series, you have that paper trail. Again, very, 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 very rare, but you know, exactly what Maria said. It's more chance that it's going to lead to something than something negative.
Thank you. Yes, great advices. Okay, so let's end with the same exercise that we began with. So finish these sentences. This one is, I'm writing, creating, producing stories that fill in the blank. So who wants to start? Sal?
Yeah, sure. You know, I write, create, produce stories that are fun but true. Stephen King says that he writes the equivalent of Big Mac and fries, and I feel the same way. If you read my stuff, it's not deep. You know, you're not going to cry when you read my stuff. That's not what I necessarily go for. Sure, it's emotional, but there's always an element of fun because I grew up, you know, like a lot of us, watching Indiana Jones and Jaws and things like that, and that's what I sort of gravitate toward.
So, Maria?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to make you laugh in one way or another, and I, you know, whether it's kids or it's, you know, or it's adult stuff. Like I like laughing through even the difficult situations, you know. So I, you know, yeah, that's.
And Danny?
Yeah, just to make people laugh, to connect with people, to make people connect with each other. It's a very cool experience just to have your words go out to people and see what it does. Sometimes on Twitter, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And sometimes Lil Nas X recognizes that you made a joke about him on iCarly. And so that's cool. But
Okay. All right. So let's fill in this blank. My motto is, and you can answer in English or Spanish.
I guess I'll just go along with this. My motto is kind of like what Danny was saying, always be writing. Like, always be writing, always be, you know, working on something.
Mine would be get in where you fit in, because you just got to get in and do what you got to do, and you find your way. And lo que está para ti, nadie te lo quite, which is it's a Willie Chirino song, which is what is yours, no one can take away from you. So that's also about that script. You know, if it's your idea, it's the execution, it's the way you do it. And if someone does take it, you can sue the hell out of them. Got a paper trail.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, definitely we have to always be writing, we're writers, but I think that we always have to be coming up with stories. So I also think you have to live your life, you know, and then the stories will come. It won't be like, oh, I remember seeing this thing on this other TV show. It's about, oh, I did this, or I was there, you know, and I think that, you know, that's important to not, you know, we tend to forget that as writers because we do sit behind a computer. So, you know, we do need to live our life too.
That's amazing. Amazing discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you. And before we open it up to Q&A with the students, I have to ask, what's next on the horizon for you all that you can talk about? So let's start with Danny.
I got Zoom for iCarly at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So that's something that from this place. This is and yeah, I got some things in the oven, but again, like a good Cuban boy, can't say anything yet. But yeah, just, you know.
Okay. Sal, you want to talk about your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I think like all of us, I got a couple of things I'm trying to get off the ground, and you know, are always in negotiations. But more immediately, I'm going to be covering set for a couple of weeks on Snowfall, it'll be my first time out doing that under this pandemic. So that'll be very interesting for me.
Maria.
I'm the company I'm working for right now is in Canada, the animation company, and so I'm up at I'm already on Zoom at 8 in the morning, so it's always early for me. But yeah, I'm developing some things too. So
okay, well, we opened for the Q&A for the students, and there is one question here from Diana Blas, and she asks, are there any creative ways or suggestions you guys have for networking for an introvert? So a lot of writers are introverts, aren't they?
I think about half. I think it's about half. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Except the guys who are actors, Danny. Those guys are not.
right, that's the thing. There's a lot of writers who have been actors, and those are not introverts. So they're the first ones to jump on their feet in the writer's room and like act it out.
I'll play a part. Yeah, we have iCarly players where we just will act out a scene, and then there's just the actors. I don't know. I've retired that, so I'm just like, I don't know. I don't want to.
Yeah, and to answer the question, I'm definitely an introvert. Like I'm happier, like at home and not going out. But I would force myself. This is not necessarily creative, but I would force myself to go to events if an event came up. The Writers Guild is holding one, or someone, or something.
Yeah.
Or even just locally, writers group. I would force myself, and it would be super uncomfortable. But sometimes you just have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, find a buddy. Find somebody who will go with you, and then you sort of introduce each other to other people, and it's more comfortable maybe that way. I don't know.
I think also, so now that everyone is on social media, especially like if you can interact with some of your favorite showrunners when they're live tweeting their episode, and you can at them or tweet at them, and you can just interact. And if you have a real question, like I talked to Tanya Saracho that way. I saw her on a panel, and then I sent her a DM, and I said, I'm such a big fan of Vida, and I think it's so amazing, and I'm a writer as well, and you're an inspiration for me with putting Latin stories on television. And then because I asked her a question at the panel. I asked her about, it was a couple years ago, so about Latinx, about the term Latinx. And then so I said, hi. So again, I guess for an introvert, if you ask questions at panels, especially like if you can get to a WGA panel, if you get to any kind of panels, if you ask a question and you don't look weird, like you don't sound weird, then you can, or it's like a thoughtful question, you can say and drop in a DM later, like, hey, that was me who asked that question. Thank you so much. You're such an inspiration, or I really appreciated that. And then once I got my first job, she DM'd me back later and was like, hey, congratulations. Like, and I want to read you, and I want to do all that, like all that stuff. So, yeah, social media is a great tool, and just don't look thirsty, and don't look, don't try to be funny, because then you're going to end up being weird, and just be yourself.
Okay. All right. We got a question for Maria. So they're asking, when can our kids watch these episodes in Spanish in the US without having to turn off the captions in Spanish? Do you think this will ever happen?
That's really tricky to watch it so that the all of the voice is in Spanish. It's tricky. It's, we're not dealing with Spanish language companies. So, you can watch, you can watch it in this country on Telemundo or Univision or something. Like they do play the episodes, and they do it in Spanish. So you can watch it there, but to play like a Spanish, completely Spanish language on Disney or on Nickelodeon, even on PBS, it's I don't see that in the near future. What we've done, which a lot of, is sprinkle in the Spanish, and it's different than, I mean, I wrote even on like Dora the Explorer where it was different, you know? So like here we're sprinkling the Spanish in more, like more authentically in a way. Like it's just part of, you know, I mean, if it were just Danny, Sal, and I, we would be saying some Spanish words in there, you know, because it's just how we speak, right? So that's how we're trying to do some of the, you know, bring the authenticity to the kids.
It was so good. It was so good. Like, it's so fluid, so natural the way it just went in and out of Spanish. That's so rare, and it's so nice to see.
Yeah, the same in the episode we played from Saul's work. They were speaking English and Spanish.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about writing for that show, that you can do that because, like Mira was saying, that's just how we talk.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you very much. This has been an amazing discussion. Thank you very much for all your advice for the students. And I think we're done with the questions as well. Thank you guys
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great.